funny.
Okay.
All right. Anything you or Henry want to say to kick us off?
I just want to say thank you, everyone, for showing up for the second session. And I said this in worship, but I'll say it again, that the recordings of the other sessions are available on Facebook and YouTube. And they're definitely worth listening to. If you jump on your exercise bike or go for a walk and listen to them, it's worth your time, I think. Okay, so Henry, anything?
Thanks. Would just say welcome again to everyone. I see some new faces and some familiar faces from last week. So glad you can join. Thanks to Kristen for spending another day with us to go through the listening results. And just to remind everyone, we are in listening and maybe digestion phase at this point to try to understand what all the information means. We're beginning to look ahead towards what actions we can take. So thanks again, everyone.
Great. Yeah, I guess that would be a good point to reiterate, just to remind folks before you get ahead of yourself, because this is when folks tend to say, okay, I hear you, and now want to race ahead to solutions. So the way that change happens most effectively for organizations like churches is to spend some time gathering data. That's listening to the congregation, to the community around you in a variety of ways. Quantitative, which would be kind of the survey that we used, the leadership assessment that we used, and then qualitative, which are interviews. And so we gather all kinds of stuff because we don't know what we don't know. And so we never want to assume that we have the answers before we do some deep listening. So that's what we just got done with. And I'll show you the results of what you told me. This is a chance for me to feed back to you what I heard, what I saw, what I experienced, and try to put some lenses on it to kind of grab onto some trends and patterns that I think are most important for you. Certainly there's things that we won't deal with and a lot of good stuff that I have and won't forget, and I'll bring forward when it's appropriate. But really my job is to bring forward what I think is the most helpful kind of key things that will help you in the future. So the next process so you're listening today and hearing the results of this feedback. And then as Henry said, you're digesting and processing and making sure that this sounds like Coastside Lutheran, that's us, and really getting a kind of a concrete understanding of where you are, because the next step will be to start moving forward and talking about where we want to go. And so it's really helpful to know where you are and then pinpoint where you want to go so that we can actually create an action plan that will get us, that's reasonable, that's doable, that is going to move us to the right place, depending on what you want. So this is really, I am accompanying you as you all kind of navigate this time and figure out where it is that you want to go, where God is calling you. So if that's helpful, and there'll be more information as leaders continue to wrestle with this information and then figure out what's a doable plan to move forward on the elements that we bring forward. All right, I will stop talking about that. But if you have any questions, please contact Pastor Sue or Henry or me if you want to know more about next steps. In the meantime, let me just kind of share with you a document that is really a summary. If you want, you can look at the 25-page report that I sent to the listening team and the council. There is nothing that I'm hiding in there. You're certainly welcome to it. It's great for insomnia because it's a lot of words. It'll put you right to sleep. But certainly you are welcome to look at the big, thick report. It has a lot of qualifiers and what you should do with this information. So what I'm bringing you today is simply just a summary, kind of getting to the nuts and bolts. What does this mean for the congregation itself? So we did a bunch of listening, as I said. The quantitative one I was talking about is the missional assessment profile. And that's an online survey, and 30 participants took it. And so really some great stuff, some great strengths you can see there. Strong sense of belonging, that this church makes a difference, a lot of stuff about relationships. I'm happy to say that there was some openness to change for the sake of mission. Strong personal faith evident. There were people saying they were indicating that there is some willingness and plans to give some more, and that you guys have the best one actually is this last one, entrepreneurial ideas for ministry. what that tells me is that you're willing to try things for the sake of God's mission, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of the great news that we have in Jesus, and that you're not so tied to the past or the way things have been done that you're kind of stuck there. So that's exciting. That means that there's a lot of possibility and willingness to support that. So challenges, of course, and some of this stuff is probably stuff that you've sensed. And of course, this is only made worse by COVID. So some of this might be exaggerated by COVID. I don't know, but it is what it is. Lower sense of energy, a sense of like we're not cohesive, or maybe we're not on the kind of the same page. Some less tolerance for difference of opinion, some diversity stuff there. Again, that cohesiveness, like what's our central mission and purpose right now? Maybe it feels like we don't quite have that under wraps. Your giving does not at all mirror your income. And I realize that it's reflective a little bit of the cost of living out there, but we want to see some movement to make sure that giving at least reflects the same style. So that if you have a lot of people making over 200,000, you should have a lot of people giving over a certain amount, so that the amounts kind of mimic the actual income levels. Again, this is hard because it's COVID. So there was a sense of less impact for worship and education and service on faith development. And again, we don't know what that means. So we are going to probably have to do some digging around to figure out what that is. And if it's just being in person or involving more people, we'll have to figure out what that is. That gives us more of a chance to that is kind of a starting place instead of an ending place in terms of wondering about that particular piece. Mixed responses to opportunities for change. So that tells us a couple of things on willingness to change. So there's that entrepreneurial piece that I was excited about, saying that there's some willingness to flex and try new things for the sake of the gospel or for the sake of God's work. Through the ministry, but also some other responses tell us that you are open to change, but you're not going to like race out and do it just because it's been proposed. There is some hesitancy. There's some kind of caution maybe. And so we want to be really thoughtful that we do whatever it is that you want to do, that we do it well, that we do a lot of communication, that we do a lot with participation, that we craft a vision and have a really thought out comprehensive plan, because you are thinkers ultimately. You got a lot of people who are educated and thinking and very thoughtful members. And so we don't want to just go out and do something rash. You're really looking for a compelling reason and plan. So that is the map, the missional assessment profile. All right, so the leadership assessment is systems assessment is just trying to get a sense of the leadership, kind of the mode of operation, really about how decisions are made, because that helps me help you when you're making decisions to know how things are working or not working, and what we need to do to make sure that that engine is firing on all cylinders, so that whatever you do in the future, it's well fueled, if you know what I mean, to use that. So great, a real openness. Your leaders are open to change. They feel supported in their leadership, and they understand that leadership is really important to mission, right? To guide the congregation. There is, because of probably some exhaustion from COVID and because of declining attendance numbers or involvement numbers, your leaders are tired. And so there's a little bit of low energy, a sense that the same people keep getting on the committees because there's just not that many bodies. Really kind of a sense that we're not giving this a lot of thought. We're not doing a lot of equipping with important resources for our leaders to make decisions. Yeah, probably a lot of this is because you've been running on survival mode since at least COVID. And so I expect that with some intentionality that could be worked back into some real nice levels of function. So I interviewed 33 people. Great to get to know your congregation. Wow, what a fantastic group of human beings. I get to do a lot of this work, and some churches I enjoy more than others. I was delighted with your people. They were so welcoming and loving, and just really wanted to share and shared very honestly, I thought, about hopes and dreams and worries and so forth. So some of the strong themes that came out of my conversations, and again, there's much more data in the long report if you want to, but strong relationships, again, that sense of welcome and community. I'm always glad to see the importance of worship and music be a key thing. Service to community, which seems to kind of sort of be a double-edged sword in your place, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So really, really important to live that service, love your neighbor in real tangible forms. And because especially there is such need in the community. And I thought, interestingly, people appreciating the access of online worship during COVID and hoping that we find ways for you all to continue that in some form or another, to continue that access after you go back to in-person. All right, challenges. Again, lack of vision and purpose, kind of like what are we working on right now? What's our unifying thing? What's our purpose? What's our reason for being? Again, that lack of energy. Very aware that there's some huge challenges about being on the coast, cost of living, distractions, people being involved in lots of other things, or people being tired and not wanting to engage in a lot of volunteer stuff on the weekends. So you have some context stuff that came up as a challenge. Again, community service, it's so important, but feeling a little bit like the cup is empty and we're kind of tired, that we're running to make a difference. And so we need to take a look at that and see if we can keep that in balance so it's not so hard. Yeah, you just have fewer kids than you used to, which is all across America. I'm sorry to say, you are not alone, but just acknowledging that you just have fewer kids, and it's reflected in your programming at this time, just because. We also did 2 community listening panels. My awesome Pathfinder team put together 2 community listening panels, and those are available if you want to watch. Really fascinating. The purpose of those is not for you to sign up for more community service, however. So when you watch those, I would like you to just keep in mind the context in which you are doing ministry. Know that that is influencing the culture around you, that those are some needs that are out there. And so you all have to be really thoughtful as a corporate body, as a congregation, about how you want to respond. Not necessarily individually, people can do whatever they want and join all the great stuff that's happening. But corporately, you want to be really thoughtful and careful to steward that corporate time, that congregational voice about how you are involved. So I think a lot of people heard all the need and want to do more. And so we can't fix everything. We can't solve everything. We can't do everything. And so this is a chance for you to hear about the great need internally and externally. So what's my summary? So I just want to say that there are some fantastic gifts. I don't want you to feel like there's no hope in whatever you choose to do in the future, no matter how you choose to live out your mission. There are beautiful human beings who are deeply connected, deeply fed, deeply inspired, and go out and live a life of faith in the world. So really beautiful congregational impact that way. You love worship, and so that's why we want to keep that front and center in terms of making sure it is as best as it can be. Centrality of community service, that's definitely part of your DNA. So we have to be really thoughtful about that and have a plan. I think would be good to have much more of a plan. And then obviously a lot of people were saying we have an awesome building, we have an awesome land, we have awesome location. Let's make sure that that remains in the asset category and that we leverage that for good things. And so we want to keep that in mind. Some of the challenges that I saw across, kind of stacking the map, the LSI, the interviews and so forth, kind of stacking those on top of each other. These are kind of what I thought are the most key things for you all to keep in mind, is that sense of unity and purpose, which I kind of was keeping in mind anyway, because that's what Henry told me when we first talked months ago. He was like, I think we need to revisit this. I think we've been pushing so hard for so long that we really need a freshen up to kind of tighten up our sense of purpose and mission. And maybe that will help us make good decisions in the future, which definitely will be, and we'll move forward with that work depending on you contemplate these things on the other side. Okay, needed for deepened faith. And a part of this, I think, is COVID. There was a lot of people missing community, missing worshiping together, missing singing, missing communion together, right? I mean, a lot of those things that really feed people. So while online is awesome, it's just really hard to be community and do worship in a way that's replicate, that does all the good stuff of in person. Again, hungry for relationship, all that kind of stuff. So you can expect that there'll be a lot of, you know, when you do get together, there'll be a lot of need to sit down and eat together and catch up and share stories and all that kind of stuff. The leadership, I think it's not broken necessarily. It's just that what I see is sometimes when churches start to diminish in terms of numbers, some of the structures and systems that worked really well for you when you were bigger were necessary because you had so many more people, right? So who gets what, when, how do we make decisions? How do we agree on all these things? Committees and that kind of stuff. And then as those numbers diminish, I see what happens in churches is you kind of, oh, we don't need that so much anymore because we're busy doing the work. And so we're not paying attention to those systems. And then when you need those systems, they're not there. And they kind of make things feel a little more chaotic because it feels like people are kind of making stuff up, which I don't think they are, but it feels that way when you have just a real small group doing the work. Yeah, so just watching how to balance the idea of being tired and overextended and trying to save the world with our works and then needing to be fed, right? So there's a balance of being fed, hearing the good news, refreshed, sent out in service. And we definitely need to keep that balance because you have some people, and COVID is part of this, you have some people who are tired. So is there, I'll stop at this point. Are there any questions with what I found findings wise? Again, there's just a lot of detailed data that goes into this, but I wanted to bring you just a summary. Is there any questions or comments about it before I put together what I sense might be an area of focus for the future?
Was anybody surprised at what they heard?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
I just a comment. I'm really pleased at the number of people who responded. We're a small group, but I don't know how our percentages rank on that, Kristen. But I was impressed that we had people who took the time to complete the survey and or do interviews. So for those of you who did that, thank you. It is an important foundational part of this process.
Yep. And even more so because we find that if people participate in the information gathering part that we've just done, they are more likely to participate in the building what's next thing, and that is more likely to be successful. So what happens is that because you get more energy, right? The more people that participate, the more people are jumping in, the more people get excited about what's happening and see the focus and see the intentionality. And so it actually is a trigger for increased engagement and vitality. So we're excited about that. Yes, I would say, Henry, to your point about participation, yes, we love to see anything over 50% of your average worship attendance. And I think that number was a little older, certainly before COVID. So your worship numbers. So I was really excited about the number of people who participated and the number of interviews. That was really stunning. That was really great. So yeah, I was really excited about that. So there's one thing that we look at that is it's kind of like checking the oil when you're on a journey. It's not necessarily where we're going, but it's important for us to know what resources we have, and that's missional readiness. That is, how flexible, adaptable, elastic are you in terms of being willing to move forward with any kind of change? So I would, in a couple of readings, both in the map and the actually, LSI has questions about it, the map, and my interviews when I was talking with people. Very strong willingness to change, especially around vision and mission and kind of clarifying that purpose piece. But also willing to change if it's clear and compelling and there's a whole plan behind it. So I thought that's actually really healthy. If you're freaked out, we would see that you're willing to change no matter what. So we're glad. We don't want people to freak out. And so we want thoughtful change. So really there are 5 key areas that I focus my recommendations around, because these 5 tend to be the ones that really you can hang your healthy congregational hook on there. And this is a lot of information, so I probably should have cut it down a little bit. I'm sorry. But you know, nighttime reading, again, it might help you with your sleep. So really I think the most important thing for you, and this is echoed, actually this is said by Pastor Sue and Henry when I first came into conversation with you, and that was we probably need to do some rethinking about our mission, our vision, where we want to go, really get specific about noting what the context is around us, being different than it was when the church started. Let's give ourselves permission to kind of reorient and solidify some of that mission and value stuff so that we can make good decisions and make sure everything else is lined up behind that. So making sure we have a good narrative that fits you, that's appropriate to you, honoring your great history, of course. We don't want to leave that behind, but knowing that things might have to look slightly different than they have in the past. Certainly COVID has thrown us into this, and just continuing with that creativity and conversation about the future. So that is that. Of course, my hope and goal is that when a congregation kind of reclaims their mission, purpose, and creates a vision, that then everything else aligns with that. So my hope is that your budget aligns with that vision, your staffing choices and where you put energy with volunteers, your programming, the way you worship, everything is towards that end. And then it all feels kind of to be a piece instead of kind of crazy piecemeal. So leadership focus, obviously, you know, as folks have held it together in a time of great trauma for our country and the world with COVID, and also a little bit before that as they navigated some number decline. We want to spend some time kind of rebuilding those processes and making sure it's probably a matter of just clarifying them and sharing them, but making sure that we have all those, the engine, all those pieces together, and that it runs really well, that it supports Pastor Sue in a way that's helpful for her to be freed from things so that she can be a pastor. Also making sure that your worship and educational or relationship ministry experiences are funded, are equipped, are right, that you're able to make a decision so that those things do what you want them to do for you. So there's some ideas in there. Faith integration, this is really just saying we need to focus on worship and probably relationships initially out when we get out of the gate with COVID. Those will be the 2 main things that need some, people are just dying for. And so we'll want to make sure that those are well supplied and thought through. And so I would say in matter of importance, I personally feel, and again, I don't have a stake in the game. You guys get to decide how this happens, but I would say the most important thing is to start on that strategic vision and clarify mission and some values and create a kind of a forward-looking narrative with the gifts that you've been given and the great strengths that you bring. And then we'll probably then also embark on a time of leadership development, which will be primarily with Pastor Sue and the council. Maybe a committee or 2, depending on how that goes. And then, of course, whenever you're ready to re-engage in person, to really equip that worship planning and probably a good potluck or 2 in there to make sure people are connected. So that is my feedback. And I know that Henry and Pastor Sue have a copy of this summary document. They also have a copy of the larger report if you would like to see that. The larger report, if you will, is not like a public thing we want to be sharing on Facebook. It's more of an internal document you would use for decision making, but it's not to be hidden, of course. It's just a deeper dive. So those are my kind of key things. Before I open it up for questions and comments, I think there are really 4 things that I want you to hold on to. One is your context is hard. It's just really hard to be a follower of Jesus right now. In our culture, it's really hard in a country of affluence with great divides between haves and have not. It's just a really hard context. It's really hard. And you're not the only ones who are struggling with it. Some of the congregational tiredness and feeling like the systems aren't working. I don't think that was an intentional or malicious negligence. I think that was just trying to keep all the balls in the air while you had less people to run the systems. And so I think what happens when you're so busy keeping the lights on and making sure, and you went through a pastoral transition in there too with COVID, I just think that you get some drift and you're not able to keep up all those systems. And when you don't feel like you need them, why would you pay attention to them? So we want to be really thoughtful, because we need to keep those systems healthy so that you stay healthy as a congregation. The piece about community service, I just wanted to give a note. Your DNA as a congregation is to absolutely give yourself away in love. If there's an injustice or a hurt or a need or a hungry person or a homeless person, your desire, at least as I understand your congregation, is to step in and make a difference. I think it's not been a very planned thing. You've had a lot of big successful, like the book fair and raising money through the pumpkin patch and all these kind of cool community things. And you've done a lot of, feeding breakfast and people volunteering and here and there and everywhere. And of course, in COVID, it just feels even more dispersed. So I think that there is some desire for the congregation to have, again, a plan to say, you all are free to do whatever you want, and be fed and go out and serve the world. But together, we're going to be really thoughtful about what's the best fit for us as a congregation, and not do stuff that kind of sucks the life out of us and doesn't match who we are. So we want to do something and do it really well, right? Because we can't do everything. And especially if you don't have a ton of people, you can't do everything very well. So we're going to pick some things that really fit you, that help you feel like it's in alignment with your mission, and that it's mutual, right? You're giving and you're receiving in that experience of community service. And through worship, we want to make sure that you're filled, that your cup is filled, so that you can go out and serve. The last thing I will say is there was a lot of, almost every person that I talked to, and the map, the highest priority is to get more people to attend worship and to get more people to join. And people said, what should be the goal? Well, it should be get more people. And I'm here to tell you that is not a goal. That is an outcome, usually a byproduct of a church that really has a strong sense of purpose and mission, a church that's going, a church that has a lot of great relationships internally of support, but it's also open to welcome new people. That's a church that has an incredible worship life. That's a church that really equips people to go out and serve. So it is very rarely I've never had a church say, let's go get more people as a goal. It has always been, let's take good care of the mission we've been given by God, and then people can hang on and jump in on that, go along for the ride. So I guess that would be just a word of caution, that people say, well, we need to grow. And I say that is a hope, not a strategy. And so we want to be really thoughtful about that. Thoughts, comments, wonderments. If you want to argue about something and I can figure out what data we need to look at, what are you curious about? How are you feeling about all of this?
I'll just comment, Kristen, again, that I so appreciate the feedback and your focus on organizational aspects and the organizational systems, because I think it's absolutely true. And as we've shrunk, we think, well, okay, we need to get this done. So we just do it, and that's kept us running. But in order to be able to grow, whether that's in terms of giving numbers, however you define that, we have to have some systems in place that let us do that. Otherwise it's kind of a one-way street to smaller. And so I just think that's a really important focus for us to think about and plan for. And to use an overworked analogy, we don't want to be flying the plane while still building it. It's much better if we can build a plane and then fly it. So,
exactly. And no matter what you decide in terms, somewhere down the road, may decide to collaborate with another congregation in the area, or you might decide to partner with a nonprofit or some kind of innovative thing, since entrepreneurial seems to be in your blood. And you absolutely have to have your mission and those systems in place so you can make those decisions. It would be really, really hard for you right now to do almost anything collaboratively because your systems are not kind of set up to keep things organized. So yeah, great point. And here's the other thing I'll say, what a great win. It could be a nice early win because it's not impossible. And it's probably not going to take as long as we think. So that will feel really good to have that kind of structure. And then inviting new people into your leadership systems, particularly, or jump starting those committees or whatever, it will be in place and people will know where to go. When it's confusing, people don't really know how to jump in. So yeah, an easy win, I think. What else? Or is there disappointment? Is there clarity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really nice to always have an outside eyes to kind of look in, because you have no skin in the game when it comes to, you just are research it and give us the data, and then it's our responsibility, to set up the next steps and how we take this information and move forward. So I did appreciate that. There was not a, for me personally, there were not a lot of surprises. And as I've mentioned in some of my answers, is that, especially out here in smaller churches, it's really, it's tough. I mean, logistically and in other ways, but
It is.
But yeah, like recruiting, people to leadership and things like that. I know that's tough. That's hard.
Yep. Others.
Well, I'm probably the newest member of the congregation, so this whole thing was actually an interesting exercise for me. I mean, I've been going to the church, but just on the high, what C&E, right? C&E, one of those C&E worshippers, just on Easter and Christmas. But then as I've gotten to become more involved in the church and see that sense of community, everything that you've kind of outlined is exactly what I was seeing as I became, learn to, become more involved in the church and more involved in my faith. And it's been, it's perfectly reflected, I think, in a lot of the comments you made. And I have seen, dwindling numbers in kind of the services and things. It definitely has been an impact from COVID. So, hearing this, you having seen what's going on in other churches, I think is a really helpful insight. So, I think that, thank you for all of this and kind of putting everybody's voices together, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who've had opinions that don't necessarily get to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Nothing surprising, I don't think, but I think hopefully, whatever I can do to help get, be part of, driving a new mission, building on that so that we can see a change in numbers and so we can see a growth in the church.
Awesome. All right, you're on it. Great. We will.
I volunteered myself. Oops.
Yes, that's right. No, that's
All right, Alice, I've got you on my list now.
It's actually fun work once you kind of know where you are, the mystery of it, and you don't have to stop. You can stop guessing about where you are, right? I think this is right. You spend a lot of time doing that if you don't know. So from here on out, we can say this is where we are. It's okay. It is what it is. And so now we're gonna, spend our time looking forward, and there's kind of a turn. Honoring that past, bringing the best parts with you and considering you guys are in great shape because you are a little bit more, interested in impact and not as worried about maintaining. I will tell you a quick story and then I'll come right back to you. I was talking with 3 churches in Metro New York that the bishop wants me to work with them to kind of, I don't know what, they're all struggling badly. But I think it's too late because when we talked about what they needed to do, they were like, yeah, no, we're not interested in that. We just would rather defend what has been and go down with the ship. And I was like, all right, well, that's well within your right, but that's kind of sad to me because this isn't your ministry. This is what God's doing in this space. And so that is kind of sad to me. But I had a point to that, and that is, it is fun to turn from being sad and the grief that about where we've been and start going, okay, God's still here. Well, let's figure out where we're going. It's actually a really fun, energizing time. It's my favorite, actually.
So that was something that I just wanted to say too, was that, and I hope this comes out right, like all of the information that you've presented shouldn't be looked on like as a report card. It's how we go into the future, right? Because everyone has worked really hard and has been faithful to the church, and and we're going to celebrate our 50th anniversary in a couple of years, which is a huge thing, right? So this is a healthy, normal thing that periodically, you revisit your mission statement and decide whether it's relative to the context you're in now, right? And you relook at, I mean, how many times when I was in corporate America did we have a reorg in our organization, right? To restructure the way the leadership worked so that it would be effective in the new environment, right? This is just like a normal thing. So, so we need to just, look forward, celebrate the past, and then look forward, and not like worry about, I don't know, if anybody's having any bad vibes, like,
I think here's
Don't worry
my
about
thing is I can't help you if your church doesn't love one another. I can't help you with that. If I can't help you if people don't have a really strong faith on which to kind of do the heavy lifting to move into the future, I can't build that. So the things that you need to be healthy or have good amounts of, you have. Right? I mean, I can help you with structure. I can help you with the process to figure out the future, but I can't manufacture some of the things that are key to who you are as a ministry. So,
and challenging, being introspective and challenging ourselves is, I mean, that's extremely healthy. I mean, that's how we become, but not just a better church, better individuals. So, it is hard. It'd be much easier just to do nothing. But then there's no passion, there's no challenge in it, and you don't improve. So I look at it the same way the pastor does. It's more like a kind of a status check of like, okay, where are we now, and where we, like what you've been saying, we've been in the past, and where do we want to go? Yeah.
It's like going to the doctor, figuring out what your blood pressure is. It is what it is. We're going to work on it, right? I mean, it's a changeable thing for most. What else? Questions about the process, or do you want Henry and Pastor Sue to talk about what's next, or you want to think more a little bit about what it means for the congregation to process these findings? Is there some sadness? Is there some hope? Where are you?
This is Brenda. I haven't talked before. I'm just sitting back listening to all this and thinking, what have we all really learned about our faith while we have been forced to be away from church? And at the moment that we get a chance to all be together, and let's hope it's very soon, I think we're going to be so elated, so excited, so happy to be together, to see each other, that I think maybe that will be sort of a chrysalis for something to open up, and that we can talk more about how we can do things differently. Meanwhile, before we get to that point, we can be still at home talking to God, trying to find out what it is He wants for us to do with our mission, with the church.
Love it.
Especially me, I listen to His voice a lot because I'm very disabled, and there are many things that I cannot do because I don't have I don't have transportation. So therefore, I have time to think more. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know.
Yeah, probably a little of both. Thank you, Brenda. That is a great word. I agree. And actually, I'll go further than that to say that COVID is actually it's been hard because we've been separated and thrust into a context that's not comfortable. There's a lot of sadness with it, a lot of loss, of course. But it also, we've been here long enough now that we know that when we go back, it's going to be different. And we've acknowledged that maybe there were things that we were doing before that maybe aren't as important as some other things we could be doing. So in some ways, we're in a liminal time kind of between things that will really, like an interim, right? That allows us to go, huh, maybe we can let go of some of that. And maybe we're being called into something new. And it's actually a gift. I noticed that churches are much more willing to do this kind of thinking now than they were before. So there is a gift in the darkness. That is for sure. Good point. Love that. Any others? Quiet bunch.
So Kristen, I guess about moving forward, I feel like I almost need to do like another level of listening, deep dive on some of the topics.
Okay, that's fine. We can do that. We can either do that, you and I, or you and a small team, or you and I and the council, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And we can unpack some of the stuff that I have summarized. And then really it's really about you guys deciding that you want to move forward, and then we'll together figure out what makes sense, what bandwidth you have, who should be. I mean, we want to be a little, I wrote you back, Henry, about, yeah, let's move forward. And then I started to think we have to be really thoughtful about who's on the doing the mission and vision stuff, because we want really that's the most important thing, really, to be honest with you. And I'd rather see that done really, really well with the right people. And then the leadership thing, I think, will be a shorter, probably structural. It's more spreadsheets, figuring out what system and who need to do what and what do we need to rebuild. And actually part of that, now that I'm thinking, should come a little bit after mission and vision, so that you can build the systems that make the vision happen.
That makes sense.
So there probably could be some things we could attend to at the council and staff level, just to make sure that information's going and that enough of stuff is off Pastor Sue's desk, plate, whatever our metaphor is, so that she can be a pastor. So we can kind of ramp up that. But I would say some of the other system stuff, what if we need an internet community committee to deal with the thousands of people that are online listening to your hybrid worship? I don't know. We don't know. So let's wait a little bit on that. If you're okay with that, we can talk. I can join a council meeting, or we could do an exec committee meeting, or whatever you want to do. And if y'all want to be involved, we will probably my commitment, because it's a body of Christ. When you're talking about mission, values, and vision, we will do work and then bring it back to the congregation to get feedback and buy-in, because it cannot be a small group of people,
Right.
making decisions in a small room without input. So it'll have more traction and it'll go further if we do that. It takes a little longer, but that's okay.
Okay. Cool.
So you tell me when you want me to jump in with you guys and talk through stuff, or Sue, if you and I want to do it, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do.
Well, I was thinking maybe next week or the week after, you and me and Henry could maybe just sit down and kind of, kind of just pick my
huge stack of great.
More like strategy on how to, what is the next step, and
yeah, glad to do that. Hi, Teresa. Any other questions? Anything about how we did it, or? It's pretty straightforward. Yep. The
Right.
Pathfinder team did an amazing job. It's one of the fastest churches I've ever done, honestly. From February start to, what is April? We're already going to start on the next phase. That's fast. So I'm quoting you when they say what's possible, because usually church time is like what should take 2 months takes 6 months. So my Pathfinders are awesome. Okay, well, feel free to email me, or ask Henry and Sue. If they don't know, they can contact me too. So glad to be transparent as possible in this process, so that y'all feel like you understand what's happening.
Great. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks so
very
much.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Blessings.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.